Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me here on this Tuesday, June 23rd edition of Bang the Book Radio. My name is Adam Burke, your host for the next 25 to 30 minutes or so, as we go over all kinds of things in the world of sports from a betting focus. Happy to have you with me here on this Tuesday edition of the show. One guest on the program, that is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio, Vegas Hockey Hotline, BetMaker Golf Podcast, Hockey Betting Podcast. He's all over the place out there, covers a lot of stuff for us here on Bang the Book Radio and a lot of stuff on his end as well. We're going to chat about this week's golf tournament, the Travelers Championship up in Connecticut, and then take a look at not one, but two NASCAR Cup Series races this weekend at Pocono Raceway, the Tricky Triangle there in Pennsylvania. So a lot of stuff coming your way here on today's show. A lot of stuff going on over at bangthebook.com as well. If it's going on, we're talking about it. Golf, NASCAR, UFC, KBO. We're doing some soccer stuff as well. And, of course, I'm going to have to start getting going on my college football stuff, my preseason prep work, looking at some power ratings, stuff like that. Hoping to do that here over the next couple of weeks. Looks like we may have baseball coming up here in late July as well, with Major League Baseball probably playing 60 games. So we'll be covering that over at the website as well. Finally, as you know, this and every edition of Bang the Book Radio, presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. One guest on the program here today, and that is Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. Brian, how's it going today, man?
All right, Adam. How's it going, bud?
Doing very well, buddy. Appreciate your time as always here, sir. And you and I were talking before we started recording here. Exciting golf tournament, exciting NASCAR race. At least what we've got going on has given us plenty of entertainment and betting value.
No, the golf's been sensational. 2 tournaments in a row that you could throw a blanket over a bunch of guys. And the prices, the overlaid prices are just through the roof. So yeah, I think real opportunities on the golf front, and we get another tournament here coming up without fans. But the quality of the field in these tournaments, where that's not necessarily been the case in past years, it's been a real treat.
Really has, and it's a bummer we're not going to have fans this week at the Travelers, because this tournament is actually the second most attended tournament behind the Waste Management Phoenix Open, which is just a 4-day drunk fest out in Scottsdale. But this one usually has a big crowd, won't have a big crowd on hand for it. But I will say this, in following my Twitter timeline and paying attention to what's going on out there, golf has a big crowd now nationwide, worldwide, with more and more people getting into betting this now because they're desperate to find things to bet. But I've seen a lot of people playing matchups and group matchups and trying to pick winners for these things. That may have an impact on some of the prices here as we go forward with some of the big names, some of the guys that came up just a little bit short, getting love the following week. It seems like that could have an impact on the betting market and the prices that people like you and I are able to get, since we're looking a little bit further down the board.
Well, I mean, take the podcast we did last week previewing the tournament this weekend. I didn't win, and it was frustrating, but I got a hell of a run for my money at ridiculous prices. One guy we mentioned last week that he was a bit of a wild card coming off the layoff, but he was playing as good as anybody before the shutdown, was Ty Hatton. So, Hatton's got the lead the majority of Sunday at 60-1. Another guy that we'd mentioned last week said watch for a couple of guys that had played well on the weekend at the Charles Schwab that were shaking the rust off. And one of the guys we mentioned, there were 2. One was Bubba Watson, but the other one was Joaquin Neiman. He had the lead for a moment. And then you talk about the opportunities that exist, that we talk about the betting strategies, is swing for the fence on the front end, and you can reload on the weekend. And Saturday morning, it wasn't the craziest $5 I ever threw out. I had Sergio Garcia at 105-1. And, he makes a run to get within one of the lead at the tail end. And honestly, if you watch that tournament, and I had said that on my shows, if you'd watch Thursday, you'd say this thing's over. Webb Simpson's winning it. I mean, he was awesome on Thursday and could have gone even lower. And then on the weekend, it was weird. He kind of just was floating around, and he got a couple of good breaks, hit it off a tree on a par 5 that could have gone out of bounds, and it went on the green. But, that's part of golf. But then his putter gets white hot at the end, and and Simpson wins the thing, and good on him. I mean, I thought he played exceptional, but amazing that you're sitting there with what 20 guys within 2 shots of the lead for the meat of the day.
Yeah, it's been great, and it's even been great too. They've had some guys mic'd up, and there have been some expletives thrown out that have kind of gone viral on social media. It's been a whole lot of fun, to say the least, and I think we should get a lot of fun here this weekend as well with the Travelers. And you got a trio of guys in the 11-1 range here. Rory, who has just on the weekend not been good here these last couple of events. Bryson DeChambeau's been terrific in both events since the return, and then Justin Thomas, who played very well in the tail end of that tournament last week. Opened with a 72, but finished final round 63, got himself in the top 10. Those 3 guys, 11-1. John Rahm, 15. Brooks Koepka, about 16. Dustin Johnson, 18. Last week's winner, Webb Simpson, also in that 18 range. Then a lot of good players in the 20 to 30 range, as we've talked about a lot. Schauffele, Patrick Cantlay comes back this week off the layoff. Patrick Reed has played well. Justin Rose has been good. Bubba Watson's won here 3 times. He's 26-1. Morikawa and Answer, a couple of younger guys playing very well, 28-1. Neiman, another young guy, 28-1. Again, a lot of good players out there, and a couple of guys that were at higher prices last weekend that have come down, and especially 2 weeks ago when we talked about Matthew Fitzpatrick and Sergio, both in the mid-30s here this week. So we've isolated guys to get at higher prices that have since come down. We just haven't been able to pick that winner.
Well, one other guy I actually had, and I bet him after Thursday's round, and I bet him a bunch last year. And I woke up golfed Sunday morning, which was a good idea at the time, but waking up at 4:30 to play at 6 to be done and beat the heat. But we got done with our round of golf. We go into the grill afterwards, and I look up, and Dylan Fratelli's is at 17 under par. I'm like, am I seeing that right? And, he shoots 62 on Sunday. I had a piece of Fratelli. I mean, I was praying for a tornado. But, here's Fratelli at another balloon number. I'd take a look at a guy like Fratelli, how, you sit there and you look at him at 150-1. I'm like, this Michael Thompson had a great Sunday. Another guy, but Fratelli, he had a great Thursday and a great Sunday. It's a matter of stringing it out over 4 days. But from a current form perspective, I mean, Fratelli's 150-1. I'd be taking him over Brian Harmon all day long, and Harmon's 70-1. I just think there's crazy overlaid price. I'm not giving up on it. He's missed the cut in both rounds, but I think Sung Kang is still a guy that's going to make some noise here by the end of the year. And he misses the cut in the first 2 tournaments, and he's 300-1. Believe me, I'm taking a little piece of him. But when I look at the top, and I think some of the things you watch Sunday, Koepka was flag hunting, and they interviewed him afterward. And he said he's done the work. The game, it was a slow start to the season. It was starting to come around, then the shutdown, but he did the work. Of the top guys, Thomas, McIlroy, DeChambeau's really solid, really consistent. It just seems like there's a goofy thing or two happens to him that costs him. Rahm, Webb Simpson, he wins back-to-back. Good for him. I don't see that happening. I think it'd be a fade on Simpson. But of the top 6, and then Cantlay, I think, coming off the shelf at 25-1. Rose is in good form. But I got Koepka at 25-1. I just put a little bet on Koepka. He looks to me like he's really close.
Yeah, I think Koepka's a good look. I like DeChambeau more. I saw him earlier in the week about 14-1. Again, price hunt. You got to go shopping for the best prices on these things, absolutely. Somebody likes DeChambeau here this week. I agree with that take. He's been excellent in just about every strokes gain department here in these first 2 tournaments off the layoff. And he plays very well here at TPC River Highlands. And before we give out some more names here, we'll just talk a little bit about this course. It's a par 70. It's a short course, about 68.50 on the yardage. This is a course that you kind of look at some of the past winners here. You've had some guys that hit it a long way. Bubba Watson can hit it a long way, but 3-time winner here, left-handed. Brian Harmon, who you just mentioned, he's 70-1 here because he's left-handed and a guy that's actually played pretty well in his career at this course. He's actually 13th in course history index per data golf, plus 1.4 strokes gained on average based on the relative strength of the field. So he's played really well here. Looks like that kind of shot shape, that kind of ball flight, like a lefty like Watson, like a lefty like Harmon, that's something that plays well here where this isn't a course loaded with hazards, but not a lot of big open spaces. It's kind of a ball striker's course in the sense that you got to hit it where you want to hit it because there aren't a lot of good landing areas.
Well, hey, listen, I mean, I made the case for Bubba Watson last week at 100-1, and he had a really good weekend, and he was so-so this past week. But now he shows up, and yes, you take note of that, horses for courses, and he's won 3 times. That was a while ago. But to go from 100-1 when he didn't play great down to 30-1, not for me.
Right. No, that's fair. And again, I mean, this is something else too, and I wonder if this dynamic is going to change. But you look at how these last 2 events have been played, guys coming off the layoff, guys being rusty. I mean, look, Webb Simpson just set the scoring record at the RBC Heritage. Now, again, it's not always the strongest of fields, but 22 under was the best winning score all time at that event. Obviously, things at the Charles Schwab, played a little bit easier than they typically would. The rough hasn't been as penal. Seems like the pin placements haven't been all that bad. You sort of wonder if at some point they flip the switch and ramp up the difficulty here, make things a little bit more challenging for these players.
No, I think that's a fair point. We've been talking about that it appears, and I don't blame them. That these guys are coming off the shelf, and you don't want these guys out there looking bad. And they're coming off a long layoff. The rough, although I thought the rough at Colonial, there were some gnarly spots, but there was no rough this past week, but because the course is narrow enough to begin with the waste areas and the trees. But you got to give these guys marks. I mean, listen, come on. The course had to be set up easy. You had 7 guys on Saturday shoot a 63.
Yeah, a lot of low numbers on the weekend for sure, and who knows? Maybe that'll be the same thing here at the Travelers. So you mentioned taking a look at Dylan Fratelli in that 125, 150-1 range. Some other guys on your radar here for this weekend at some bigger prices?
Well, like I said, I mean, of the favorites, I think you got to look at Koepka. And I'm not going to get off the Sung Kang bandwagon. I mean, he's not playing well right now. He had a hole-in-one was his highlight at Colonial. So that's the crazy play. The Fratelli number to me is just stupefying. Michael Thompson, he was contending for the win this past Sunday, and there's another guy in that 150-1 range, which is kind of a gong show number. A guy that I think is very quietly a real solid player is Max Homa at 125-1. Kokrak's 100-1. He had a chance to win at Colonial. So those are some of the numbers. I think there's just overlaid prices. Just because you're going to see every shot he hits, I don't know that you throw $5 on Phil at 140-1. He hasn't played here in 15 years. But again, to me, the way to do this is play your 3 guys, 4 guys on the front end. I mean, I Koepka, okay, 25-1, that's a great price. I think he looks like he's really trending the right way. And then I think you swing for some long guys. And I'm telling you, Friday night, Saturday's moving day. Friday night, you get somebody 4 shots off the pace at 75-1. It's insane. I mean, the way to and then matchups, like you said, the head-to-head matchups, tournament matchups. There's a boatload of ways to play. Another guy you should mention, which the price from the past 2 weeks, for the life of me, I don't understand how it's Corey Connors 80-1.
Yeah.
I mean, he's playing great.
He is. Corey Connors is definitely playing great. I like the Max Homa play. I wrote about him over at bangthebook.com is a daily fantasy value play. Only $7,000 on the DraftKings salary, but that's a guy that he was 12th in strokes gained tee to green last week. He just didn't putt well, and he's putt well pretty much all year long. He's just outside the top 40 in strokes gained putting. Putting's usually not his problem. Last week it was. So if he fixes that here this week, definitely a guy that could be in the hunt. And again, we're talking about balloon numbers to win. You could play top 10s, top 20s, stuff like that. You could do some different things with those. I'll throw out a couple of my long shot prices here for you, Brian, and then we'll move on to NASCAR. Doc Redman's out there at 150-1. Doc Redman, he's only 22 years old, but he's a great tee to green player. He's had some issues with putting, and you got to make putts, and certainly with the courses playing the way that they are, you really got to make putts because a lot of guys wind up with some pretty good numbers. But he's top 25 in driving accuracy this year. He's been under par in 6 of his 8 rounds since the return. Again, just 22 years old. I hate this as a South Carolina fan, but he's a Clemson product. But again, great tee to green skills at 150-1, not a bad gamble. And then at 200-1, I'll stay with kind of that Southeast theme here. Matthew Neesmith has actually played pretty well. Top 40 in driving accuracy, 45th in strokes gained putting, 16th in GIR percentage, top 20 in strokes gained tee to green last week. But again, another guy like Max Homa who played well in a lot of areas, just didn't make enough putts. But Neesmith at 200-1, I don't think that's a bad grab this week at all.
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of ways, you can go with this thing. And I'm just, while you were talking, I just wanted to go follow up a little bit on Homa. And I'm looking at him. I mean, he was 9th in the Farmers, 6th in the Waste Management. Nothing wrong with 14th at Pebble Beach. And then he was top 5 at the Genesis. Then the shutdown. And he missed the cut by a shot, I believe, at the Charles Schwab. I mean, shoots 70-69. That's not horrible golf. But here he comes this last week. He had 4 rounds in the 60s. Finished 41st. But, I mean, like you said, if the putter was just off a tick and he gets the putter fixed a touch, 4 rounds in the 60s, the guy's 110-1, and he's got 3 top 10s on his resume earlier this year. He's 110-1. It's, I mean, you're sitting there going with play, like you mentioned, Redmond, guys like that. I mean, from a form perspective, you can look at guys like this and say there's still a lot of gray areas out there. There's no reason a grenade can't win this thing.
Well, we'll definitely keep an eye on the golf stuff. And Max Homa also has a great Twitter account, by the way, for those that don't follow him. He's fantastic. He's extremely entertaining on there. So somebody asked him how he felt about tying with Rory McIlroy, and he goes, well, probably better than he felt about tying with me.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, that's just perfect. And you know what? I love this, too. This is just a side note. We'll end on this. I love the personality getting added to golf. With some of these young players that have come up and played really, really well, you obviously have some of the brasher, more confident guys like a Rory, Tiger when he's going well. Golf has added a lot of personality here over the last few years. Now they've got guys mic'd up with the coverage, stuff like that. This is obviously, this COVID-19 pandemic has not been good in so many ways. It's been such a tragic incident around the world. Some of the silver linings that have come out of it from sports, specifically golf, getting more of a following, having more of these personalities, the charity matches, more betting interest. All of this has been great for the PGA Tour, and I hope that they're able to keep that momentum going, once they're going up against basketball, hockey, football, etc.
Listen, I think golf, horse racing, NASCAR, people are paying attention to it now just because, and then when the other stuff returns, I don't know that people necessarily abandon it. And I think these sports could see a rise in popularity, and from the book's perspective, a rise in handle. When the mainstream stuff returns, they've been paying attention to it and feel like there's an ounce of education involved in it. So I think these sports that have been up and running during for the most part, shutdown will reap rewards.
All right, so we transition over to the NASCAR Cup Series side of things here for a doubleheader at Pocono, and this was scheduled. This is not because of things being changed due to coronavirus or anything like that. This was scheduled for June 27th and 28th. The Pocono Organics 325 is Saturday. The Pocono 350 is Sunday. Unless something gets mangled with the car, something like that, the drivers are supposed to use the same car throughout the weekend. Practice and qualifying supposed to go off on Friday. I think that's still the plan, even though obviously things have changed here a little bit with the Cup Series schedule. Pocono is an interesting track. They call it the Tricky Triangle for a reason. It's kind of part road course, part oval, part all sorts of different things. 2.5-mile track here. And I will say this, as interesting and as exciting as Pocono is, I don't think we get 56 lead changes like we saw during the GEICO 500 yesterday.
No, honestly, I think the way you're going to have to play this one are the group matchups. There's just going to be absolutely no value. Listen, for years, I was all about, and this is scary how, hey, these guys are getting old, but how time flies. I was all about always Denny Hamlin or Kurt Busch at Pocono, and those guys just always ran good there. And you look at the recent results: Hamlin, Busch, Kyle Busch, Truex, Kyle Busch. All right, so you got to play a Joe Gibbs car here, right? Let's just cut to the chase. I think a Joe Gibbs car, I'd be looking at almost a 2-horse race with Hamlin and Busch, but you got to sit there and say, well, you got to give Truex a puncher's chance. Beyond that, I think you're looking mid-pack where you can make your money with group matchups and some of the mid-tier guys. I think Reddick is a guy. Reddick might be a nice price play. This kid just goes pedal to the metal. So maybe you get an overlay price on a guy like Reddick, and maybe I'd say a puncher's chance for Jimmy Johnson, who's won here in the past. And he's close. He's very close and been snake bit. Speaking of snake bit, I mean, I love Talladega, and you can play anybody there. And, very quietly. I mean, I had Logano. It was amazing how that thing shaked out with the yellow where it fell, and then these guys all had mileage concerns. But Logano had the best car, and he's the most aggressive guy. But it came down to who was saving fuel. But the two guys I played Logano in a group matchup, but the two guys I played at the big price were DiBenedetto, who for the most part, until he got in fuel trouble, they were in the top 4 the whole race. And the other guy was Eric Almirola. And I missed winning that literally by about 6 inches because Almirola had the big run at the end of the race, and he had to duck down low, and he literally just clipped the front bumper of Stenhouse, and he actually finished third going sideways. If he had not gotten clipped, Almirola was winning that race. So, and he was 30-1.
Well, in this race, I mean, again, you've got back-to-back days, so you wonder how that's going to go for the drivers because we talked about this. I mean, the return on May 17th, this is 11 races in 41 days or something like that for the Cup Series, now with a back-to-back. And at least, Long Pond, Pennsylvania is not the sultry heat of the Southeast or anything like that, but still, back-to-back race days. The distances have been shortened a little bit for these two races here to accommodate the back-to-back factor. But still, you wonder if you're an older driver, let's say a Denny Hamlin or a Kurt Busch, something like that, even a Kevin Harvick at this point, do you go all out to try to win that first race because you know that the second race you may be dragging a little bit, it may be a little bit tougher on you physically and mentally, or do you kind of try to play the long game, position yourself on Saturday, hope you're positioned well on Sunday too? And it's tough for us to kind of break this down because of the rain pushing back Talladega to Monday. I haven't seen odds out there in the offshore market for this yet. Maybe you've seen some out there in Vegas.
No,
but we don't have any prices on this thing. So we're just kind of speculating here. But again, with the back-to-back, I mean, Kyle Busch is going to be your favorite, by the way. But with the back-to-back, I mean, do you see some different strategy in play here where do you go all out Saturday, risk your car, go for that win? Then what do you do on Sunday? I think there's some interesting strategic elements to this here that you can kind of read between the lines if you see some driver quotes or something like that as we get closer to these two races.
Well, I would say my strategy might be watching the race Saturday, that it's possible it happens, but if it were to happen, that a quality driver, quality car, say gets, into the wall and has some damage, and then he's rolling the backup car out on Sunday, and their backup cars are damn near close to their number one car. So if a quality guy has a DNF and is rolling out a fresh car on Sunday against the guys that had to complete the full race, that might be a guy you take a look at on a Sunday. So, that's maybe read between the lines, a little off the wall thinking. But beyond that, I'm just saying I'd be playing group matchups in this thing. This is one of these tracks where it's a parade through town, and they spread out. And there's just not a whole hell of a lot of passing goes on here. So I think you don't look much further than Denny Hamlin or Kyle Busch, honestly, I don't think, for the win here. So I think you get, if they're going to be in the 3-4 to 1 range, that you're telling me at plus 275 or $3. I played Tyler Reddick in a group matchup. I think you're better served to bet the matchups than you are to bet the win here. There's just no value in it. I hate value. I hate that word. No value in ripping up a losing ticket. But I don't think you could go any further than the Joe Gibbs cars.
Kyle Busch, 3 wins in the last 3 years. Again, there are 2 races a year at Pocono, so he's won 3 of the 6.
3 of the last 5.
Yeah, he's got 3 stage wins as well, 3 stage 1 wins in this race. Truex got a couple of wins, as you mentioned. Hamlin, 5 career at Pocono, did get that win a couple of years ago, or last year, actually. His first since 2010, so maybe he turned it back a little bit. Go ahead.
Jimmy Johnson's won 3 times here, and he's running well.
Yeah.
But I think he's got a tiger by the tail with the Joe Gibbs cars.
This is a tough one. It is. I mean, because if you try to go against Gibbs, Brad Keselowski, he's got 4 straight top 5s in this first race and 5 the last 6. He's got a win here, 5 top 5s in the second race. So he's been around. If you're looking to skirt the Joe Gibbs team, which is scary here this week, Keselowski's probably your guy. Harvick's got 7 top 5 finishes here in the last 6 years.
Blaney's got a win there. He does have his win there, and he's coming off with. And Blaney's run well all year long. He just seems to find a lot of trouble. And by the way, isn't that the irony of all ironies? The way it shakes out. If you remember I don't know if you were able to watch the whole race, but there was one moment, I think it was Keselowski who did it, where Blaney was coming up in the outside lane. It was about halfway through the race, and Keselowski just plowed into him, with the bump drafting. But Blaney got damn near sideways and somehow didn't wreck and never took his foot off the pedal and actually rushed up and took the lead. So, he was literally an inch away from causing the big one, and he saved it and ended up winning the race. So good on him.
Well, if your long shot's Tyler Reddick, I'll throw one out here, and this is the only Chevy guy I'd really be interested in taking. I think Chase Elliott does run well here, but there's not a ton of value week in and week out on Chase Elliott anymore. My long shot guy here is Billy Byron. William Byron last year, 2nd in the first stage, 3rd in the second stage. He eventually finished 9th. He was 4th in the second race. Some guys, especially some of these young guys, just kind of have tracks that just sort of feel comfortable to them. I think William Byron, again, winning price, he's probably 25, 28, 30 to 1, something like that when the odds get posted. But to win his group, probably plus 250, plus 260, something like that. Maybe some head-to-head matchup stuff. William Byron is going to be the longer shot guy that I like here. But it's probably Busch, Keselowski, Harvick, the usual suspects that win this thing.
I believe you're right, sir. The one intrigue is watch Saturday and try to get a read on it, see if there's something you can spot for a Sunday. But I would go down to the lower tier rungs of the group matchups and take a look at maybe in a group matchup. LaJoy actually runs pretty good on a regular basis. It's amazing. They're always attached at the hip, Bell or Buscher, and Bell was running up front, actually had the lead, and went below the yellow line and got penalized. Bell was running good yesterday, but so, it's not just who wins this thing. The real real opportunities, I think, specifically this weekend, lie in the middle and the back of the pack.
Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio, Vegas Hockey Hotline, and a couple of different podcasts. What's the best way for people to get your work, man?
On Twitter at Brian Blessing, put the links out for pretty much everything we do. The Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline shows are archived at sportsbookradio.com. And noon to 2 Eastern, you can listen to them live at kshp.com.
Well, make sure you follow Brian on Twitter at Brian Blessing. Brian, always a treat to talk golf, NASCAR, or whatever else with you here on Bang the Book Radio. Thank you so much for joining me, man, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right, bud, and then we'll see what happens here. Getting word, like you said, on baseball, hockey. We got the NHL Draft Friday.
Speaking of hockey, I'll ask you this. Vegas will be one hub city. Columbus has been taken out of the running for the East. What's the other one going to be, Toronto?
No, it's sounding like, for whatever reason, not whatever reason, Vancouver's gaining a lot of steam. The only thing that's odd is having two sites that would be in the Pacific time zone, but all they're supposed to be doing is playing hockey. But Vancouver did have the Olympics, right? So they've kind of staged this type of event before. I know they're making a push up in Edmonton and Alberta. I don't know. Vegas for sure, but I mean a lot of buzz about Vancouver of late. But so much of this depends on what the testing is going to be by the end of the week when they make the decision.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, make sure you tune into Vegas Hockey Hotline to get all those updates for that. Like I said, Brian, appreciate your time, man, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right, bud. Have a good day.
There you go. There's Brian Blessing, once again, the host of Sportsbook Radio, Vegas Hockey Hotline, hockey betting podcast, the BetMaker Golf podcast, a lot of stuff that he does. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at Brian Blessing. I'll be back on Thursday with a new edition of the Bettor's Box, our KBO betting podcast. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you again on Thursday.